"We each speak 12 languages," said the twin daughters of the black gardener. The Arab billionaire's laughter shattered the silence of the Vancouver penthouse like breaking crystal. 12 languages? Each. Rashid Nazari's contempt filled the executive suite of Nazari Holdings, 47 floors above the Pacific coastline. "Girls, you probably can't even properly conjugate verbs in English." Aliyah and Layla Winters, identical twins aged 14, stood in the massive corner office clutching their faded public school backpacks, their matching dark eyes unwavering despite the heat of humiliation coloring their faces. Behind them, their father Samuel Winters, 44, gripped his work gloves with hands that had shaped the corporate headquarters prize-winning botanical gardens for 6 years, knowing he'd made a catastrophic error bringing his daughters to work today. Rashid Nazari, 51 years old and commander of a $3.8 billion technology empire, was experiencing the most amusing morning he'd had in months. These black twins, daughters of his gardener, had just claimed they each spoke 12 languages. He doubted they could even write a proper essay in one. "Samuel, control your daughter's fantasies," Rashid commanded, settling into his $18,000 Italian leather chair. "This delusion is embarrassing for everyone." "Mr. Nazari," Samuel whispered, his voice carrying 6 years of swallowed pride and accepted humiliation. "Girls, apologize to Mr. Nazari immediately." "No apologies necessary." Rashid waved his hand dismissively, his Rolex Daytona catching the morning sun. "I'm entertained. Please, young ladies, enlighten me about these 12 mysterious languages." Aliyah, older by 4 minutes, stepped forward. At 14, she had already learned that men like Rashid Nazari viewed people like her family as scenery, living decorations in their world of power, never participants. English, French, Arabic, Mandarin, Spanish, Russian, Japanese, German, Hindi, Portuguese, Korean, and Swahili, Aliyah stated, each word crisp as winter air. Layla, matching her sister's stance, added, "We're certified at professional translation level in all 12. Not tourist phrases, diplomatic-grade fluency." Rashid's laughter returned, harsher now. "Diplomatic grade? You're 14. Your father makes $19 an hour maintaining my gardens, and you expect me to believe you've achieved what career diplomats spend decades learning." Samuel felt each word like a slap. For 6 years, he had crafted botanical masterpieces that had earned 4 national awards for Nazari Holdings. Yet to Rashid, he was merely the gardener, invisible except when the topiary needed trimming. "Baba," Layla murmured in Swahili, knowing Rashid wouldn't understand. "Trust us. We've prepared for this." Rashid's eyes narrowed. "English only in my presence." "Actually," Aliyah switched to flawless Damascene Arabic, "there's no such policy in your employee code of conduct. We've memorized all 412 pages." The office seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rashid understood Arabic perfectly, it was his mother tongue. But this wasn't the broken Arabic of language apps. This was sophisticated, classical Arabic with perfect grammar that most native speakers couldn't achieve. "Mr. Nazari," Layla continued in English, "would you prefer a demonstration?" Rashid leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. These weren't the cowering children he'd expected. Something about them made him deeply uncomfortable. "Fine." He grabbed his phone. "I'll call my Dubai office right now. If you can simultaneously translate a real business negotiation, I might believe you speak Arabic." What Rashid didn't know was that Aliyah and Layla Winters had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. What began as a plan to help their father had evolved into something far more sophisticated, a carefully orchestrated revelation that would expose not just Rashid's prejudices, but a secret about his business that would shatter everything. The twins locked eyes, a wordless communication perfected over 14 years of shared existence. Aliyah nodded imperceptibly. "Make your call," she said simply. Rashid dialed, his fingers betraying the slightest tremor. As the phone rang, he studied the twins more carefully. They carried themselves with impossible confidence for teenagers from East Vancouver's struggling neighborhoods. Their clothes were clearly thrift store finds, but worn with quiet dignity. Their father's work boots were aged but spotless, like the gardens he tended. "Assalamu alaikum, Rashid," came the voice through speaker. It was Ahmed Hassan, his Middle East operations director. Without hesitation, Layla began translating simultaneously, her Arabic flowing like silk. But she wasn't merely translating, she was correcting Rashid's linguistic mistakes in real time, fixing errors before they reached Ahmed's ears. Aliyah pulled out a notebook and began writing furiously. When Rashid ended the call 5 minutes later, she handed him the paper. It was a complete bilingual transcript with margin notes explaining cultural nuances he'd missed and potential misunderstandings his errors could have caused. Rashid stared at the paper, his hand unsteady. How did you? "Mr. Nazari," Aliyah said calmly, "you just inadvertently insulted Mr. Hassan 3 times. You used anta in a context that implied superiority, confused Amal with Amalia when discussing operations, and your pronunciation of Mustaqbal suggested you think his team's future is questionable." Blood drained from Rashid's face. Ahmed had seemed offended during the call, even cold. Rashid had blamed the connection quality, but now. "You've been losing Middle Eastern contracts," Layla observed. 40% decline over 18 months. "How could you possibly know that?" Rashid whispered. Samuel watched his daughters with stunned pride. When had they learned all this? How had they hidden it even from him? "Public shareholder reports," Aliyah explained. "Nazari Holdings is publicly traded. The data's all there if you understand financial Arabic terminology." Rashid collapsed into his chair. These weren't just multilingual teenagers, they were analyzing his corporation at executive level. "Why?" he asked, genuinely bewildered. "Why learn all this?" The twins looked at their father before Layla answered. "Because 3 years ago, during your investors' garden party, you didn't know we were pruning behind the heritage roses when you said, 'Samuel is proof that some people are born to serve. His kind understands soil, not spreadsheets.'" Samuel's face crumpled. "You heard that?" "We heard everything, Dad," Aliyah said gently. "Every dismissive laugh, every cruel joke, every time they discussed you like you weren't human. So we decided," Layla continued, "to become everything Mr. Nazari believes we cannot be." Rashid felt ice in his veins. "The Vancouver Public Library," he said slowly. "They offer free language programs. Every day after school," Aliyah confirmed. 4 hours minimum. Weekends, 10 hours. 3 years straight. "But why 12 languages?" Rashid asked. "Why go to such extremes?" "Because," Layla said, pulling out a tablet, "Nazari Holdings operates in exactly 12 primary markets. And you're hemorrhaging money in each one due to cultural ignorance." She opened a presentation. It was a devastating analysis of Nazari Holdings' international failures, documenting millions in losses from translation errors, cultural insults, and communication failures. "This is impossible," Rashid breathed. "You're 14. You couldn't have." "Slide 23, Aliyah interrupted. "The Beijing contract you lost? You signed the initial documents on the 14th. In Mandarin, 14 sounds like, 'will certainly die.' They saw it as a death curse." "Slide 41, Layla added. "The Mumbai Tech Center that failed? Your grand opening used white lilies. In Hindu culture, those are funeral flowers. You basically opened with a death ceremony." Rashid grabbed the tablet, scrolling through slide after slide of meticulously documented disasters, each traced to cultural blindness. The twins had accomplished what his entire international team had failed to do: identify why Nazari Holdings was failing globally. "You know what's ironic?" Aliyah asked. "You grew up in a refugee camp in Jordan. Your father was an illiterate construction worker. You built this empire from nothing." Rashid's head snapped up. Nobody knew his real background. He'd buried it under decades of fabricated biography. How? The same way we learned everything else, Layla said. UN refugee records. Old Jordanian newspapers. Your school records where teachers wrote will never amount to anything. The words hit like physical blows. Rashid saw himself at 14, mocked for his father's illiteracy, dismissed for his refugee status, told he'd never escape poverty. You became everything they said you couldn't, Aliyah observed. Then you became them. The silence was suffocating. Samuel looked between his daughters and his employer, finally understanding. His girls hadn't just learned languages, they'd constructed a complete psychological profile of Rashid Nazari. Mr. Nazari, Layla said, pulling another folder from her backpack. We haven't shown you the most important documents yet. The folder was labeled confidential in 12 languages. Rashid's shaking hands opened it. Inside were documents that turned his blood to ice, internal emails discussing discriminatory hiring, recorded conversations about keeping certain types out of management, financial records showing race-based pay gaps. Where did you get these? He choked out. We didn't steal anything, Aliyah assured him. These are from public court records. The 4 discrimination lawsuits against Nazari Holdings that you settled with NDAs. The initial filings remain public. What do you want? Rashid asked, barely audible. The twins looked at each other, then at their father, who stood frozen, still processing everything. We want you to listen, Layla said. Really listen. To a proposal that will save your company and perhaps your soul. Rashid Nazari, who had built an empire on assumed superiority, was about to discover that the gardener's daughters had orchestrated something far beyond a simple confrontation. Before we continue, Aliyah said, producing a small recording device, you should know we've recorded everything in this office. Every word, every admission. Rashid laughed bitterly. Blackmail? Of course. No, Samuel spoke for the first time in minutes, his voice stronger than Rashid had ever heard. My daughters don't blackmail. They negotiate. The twins each pulled out a bound presentation from their backpacks, professionally printed with headers in 12 languages. The Nazari Holdings Global Integration Initiative. 6 months of preparation, Layla said, handing Rashid a copy. Complete restructuring of your international operations. Using cultural intelligence as the foundation, Aliyah added. Not just translation, true cultural integration. Rashid opened it. The first page alone contained projections that staggered him, potential 400% increase in international revenue within 2 years. Page 15, Layla directed. Dubai office restructuring. Instead of Canadian executives trying to manage Arab culture, you promote local talent with bicultural expertise. Page 31, Aliyah continued. The Asian expansion you're planning. Instead of your colonial approach, a partnership model respecting local customs. The Korean market alone could yield $3.7 billion. Rashid read, his disbelief mounting. These teenagers had designed a better international strategy than McKinsey consultants who charged millions. How? He managed. Because we see what you refuse to see, Aliyah said. That brilliance isn't about bloodlines or bank accounts. It's about perspective. And you've been operating with only one perspective, yours. The gardener's daughters, Layla added with a slight smile, see from ground level. We understand roots, not just blossoms. Samuel stepped forward. Mr. Nazari, for 6 years, I've designed gardens that helped you close billion-dollar deals. The Zen garden that impressed the Yamamoto delegation? I researched for 4 months to ensure every stone placement was culturally perfect. The Persian paradise garden for your Iranian partners? I studied Islamic geometry to create something that would resonate with their souls. Rashid stared at Samuel as if seeing him for the first time. You designed those? I designed those, Samuel confirmed. Because I understand something you don't. Respect isn't about words. It's about effort. It's about caring enough to learn what matters to others. Your gardens have been teaching the lesson all along, Aliyah observed. Dad's been showing you how to do international business for 6 years. You just never thought to learn from a gardener. Rashid felt his entire worldview crumbling. Everything about merit, intelligence, the natural order, all of it was wrong. The proposal, Layla said. Page 47. Rashid turned to it. A detailed implementation plan including 2 new positions. Co-directors of cultural intelligence. You want me to hire you, Rashid said slowly. 2 14-year-olds as directors? Consultants while we finish school, Aliyah corrected. Full executive positions at 18. With university scholarships, Layla added. And not just for us. Page 52 outlined a comprehensive scholarship program for underprivileged youth, funded by the increased revenue from their restructuring. You're asking me to revolutionize my company based on teenage ideas, Rashid said. No, Samuel said firmly. They're asking you to save your company by finally seeing the talent you've been blind to. Rashid walked to the window, gazing at the gardens below. Each one told a story he'd never bothered to read. The Zen garden, the Persian paradise, the English roses, the African water feature. Samuel had created a multicultural masterpiece that Rashid passed daily without understanding. There's something else, Aliyah said quietly. Rashid turned back. Layla showed her phone screen. A scheduled email set to send in exactly 12 minutes to every major Canadian news outlet. Subject: Nazari Holdings, a case study in systemic discrimination, she read. Attached are all documents shown, plus additional evidence. Additional? Rashid's voice cracked. 3 of your former employees now work at the Canadian Human Rights Commission, Aliyah explained. They've been building a case, waiting for the right moment. Rashid felt the walls closing in. You'll destroy me. No, Layla said. We're offering you the same choice you've given our father for 6 years. Submit to humiliation or lose everything. Except, Aliyah added, we're offering a third option, transformation. The timer showed 10 minutes. If you sign our proposal, Layla explained, the email deletes. You get a revolutionary strategy that will quadruple your international revenue. We get to prove talent exists everywhere. And if I refuse? Rashid asked, knowing the answer. Then Canada sees exactly who Rashid Nazari really is, Aliyah said. And your competitors get to hire us. 8 minutes. Rashid thought about his empire, built on brilliance but also blindness. The contracts lost, opportunities missed, all because he couldn't see past his prejudices. Your father, he said suddenly to the twins. He never finished high school? Samuel stiffened, but Aliyah answered. He didn't. Dropped out at 16 to support his siblings when their father died. But he speaks 4 languages, Layla added. English, French, Patois, and enough Japanese to design that Zen garden. Learned them all using the same library programs we did. Rashid stared at Samuel, the man he'd dismissed as just the gardener for 6 years. A multilingual artist who'd raised 2 geniuses on $19 an hour. 6 minutes. The presentation, Rashid said urgently. This section on South American expansion. It's perfect. How did you know about the Sao Paulo negotiations? Page 67, Aliyah directed. Your mistakes aren't just linguistic. They're systemic. You approach every culture like they're inferior versions of Western capitalism. When actually, Layla continued, each culture contains business wisdom you can't access because you don't speak their language, literally or metaphorically. For minutes, Rashid's phone rang. His CFO, Jennifer Chin. Rashid, we just lost the Tokyo contract. They called our proposal culturally insulting. That's another $75 million gone. He hung up, face ashen. The twins looked unsurprised. You knew, he accused. We sent an anonymous warning to your international team 3 weeks ago, Aliyah said, pointing out the cultural problems in the Tokyo proposal. It was deleted unread, Layla added. The subject line was in Japanese. Nobody in your international department could read it. 2 minutes. My father, Rashid said suddenly, words tumbling out. Couldn't read or write. Worked construction in the refugee camp. Died thinking I was ashamed of him. Were you? Samuel asked quietly. Rashid nodded, tears threatening. I was. I spent my life running from what he was. And became worse, someone who made others feel that same shame. 1 minute. Mr. Nazari, Aliyah said gently. We're not here to destroy. We're here to offer what you've never given others, a second chance. But second chances, Layla added, require first admissions. 30 seconds. Rashid looked at the timer, then at Samuel, seeing clearly for the first time. A man whose intelligence he'd refused to acknowledge because it came without credentials. I'll do it, he said. Everything. The restructuring, the positions, the scholarships. And? Aliyah prompted. Rashid understood. This wasn't just business. And I apologize, he said, facing Samuel, for 6 years of disrespect. For every dismissive comment. For seeing you as less than human when you're more human than I've ever been. 10 seconds. Say it, Layla said quietly. Say what you really learned. Rashid took a breath from his soul's depths. I learned that Samuel Winters and his brilliant daughters are worth more than my entire executive team. That intelligence isn't inherited or purchased, it's cultivated, like a garden, with patience and respect for the soil it grows in. Layla canceled the email with 3 seconds remaining. The silence was profound. For people in an office worth millions, but the power had completely shifted. Now, Aliyah said, producing a contract, let's discuss terms. Rashid almost smiled. Of course they had contracts ready. Your consulting fee? He asked. $1 each, Layla said. Rashid blinked. $1. We don't need your money, Aliyah explained. We need your platform. To prove talent exists everywhere. The real payment is the scholarship program, 60 students annually from underserved communities. And, Layla added, Samuel becomes Director of Cultural Assets at $175,000 annually. I don't need. Samuel started. Yes, you do, his daughters said together. Rashid read the contract. It was flawless, clearly reviewed by legal experts. Who helped with this? He asked. Ms. Rodriguez, Aliyah answered. Former senior partner at Hayes and Associates before being fired for being too aggressive, defending discrimination cases. She teaches free legal workshops at the community center now. Another brilliant mind his world had discarded. There's a condition, Layla said. Full public announcement. Press conference admitting past mistakes and introducing the new direction. When? Rashid asked. Tomorrow, Aliyah said. Already scheduled. Rashid did laugh then. You scheduled a press conference for my company? We scheduled a transformation, Layla corrected. Your stock will jump 15% within a week when investors understand what you're implementing. Rashid signed, his hands steady for the first time. You know what's strangest? He said, handing the signed contract to Samuel. Free. Like I've been carrying chains I didn't know were there. That's the weight of prejudice, Samuel said simply. It's heavier on the carrier than on those it's meant to crush. As they prepared to leave, Rashid called out, Wait, why didn't you just destroy me? You had everything. The twins looked at each other, then at their father. Because Dad taught us that gardens grow better with compost than scorched earth, Aliyah answered. You can transform waste into nourishment. Destroying you would have been easy. Transforming you, that takes real intelligence. 6 months later, Rashid Nazari stood before an audience at the University of British Columbia, delivering what would become known as the Garden Lesson. 6 months ago, he began, I was the stupidest smart man in Canada. I'd built a multi-billion empire but couldn't see the wisdom growing in my own garden. In the audience, Aliyah and Layla Winters sat with their father, now Director of Cultural Assets. The twins wore matching UBC sweaters, early admission to the International Business Program, full scholarships. These young women, Rashid continued, gesturing to the twins, taught me that speaking multiple languages isn't about words, it's about worlds. Each language opens understanding that money can't buy and prejudice can't see. The transformation had been remarkable. The cultural intelligence approach had not only recovered lost contracts but opened previously impossible markets. The Tokyo contract was renegotiated and signed. The Dubai office thrived under local leadership. South American expansion exceeded projections by 300%. Mr. Winters, a reporter asked Samuel after the speech, "How did you raise such remarkable daughters?" Samuel smiled, finding his girls in the crowd. "I didn't raise remarkable daughters. I raised daughters who refused to let the world tell them they weren't remarkable." 12 languages each is extraordinary, the reporter pressed. "They learned 12, Samuel said proudly. "But taught one, the language of respect. That's the only one that matters." Later, in Rashid's office, the same office where confrontation became transformation, the four reviewed scholarship applications. This one, Layla pointed. Amara Singh, daughter of a janitor, already speaks 8 languages. "Only 8? Rashid joked, then caught himself. "Sorry, old habits." "It's okay," Aliyah laughed. "Change takes time. Catching yourself means you're learning." Rashid looked at the gardens through his window. Samuel had redesigned them to represent every continent, a living reminder of global diversity. "You know what I realized?" Rashid said. "I spent my life trying to prove I was better than my father. Your daughters spent theirs proving they were worthy of theirs." Samuel's eyes misted. "Rashid." "We're colleagues," Rashid said. "Friends, even." "Do you know why I stayed all those years?" Samuel asked. "Despite everything?" Rashid shook his head. "Because I knew my daughters would stand in this office one day. I just didn't know they'd own it when they did." "We don't own it," Layla laughed. "Yet," Aliyah added with a grin. Rashid laughed too, but something in their eyes made him wonder if they were joking. These young women who'd orchestrated his transformation at 14, what would they achieve at 24? At 34? As the sun set over Vancouver, painting the Nazari Holdings Tower gold, Rashid understood something profound. He'd built his empire believing power meant standing above others. But real power, the kind that transforms industries and changes lives, comes from lifting others up. "One more thing," Aliyah said. "We've been accepted to a special program." "The UN Youth Interpreters Initiative," Layla explained. "Working with refugee communities, preserving languages while teaching new ones." "When do you start?" Rashid asked. "Next month," Aliyah said. "But we've trained our replacements." She gestured to the door where 3 young people stood, children of the night janitor, the cafeteria worker, the parking attendant. Each held portfolios. "They each speak 10 languages, Layla said casually. "We've been tutoring them." Rashid looked at the young faces, seeing not service workers' children but future executives, innovators, world changers. "Bring them in," he said, standing to greet them properly. "Let's hear what they have to say." As the new students entered, eager and brilliant, Rashid caught Samuel's eye. "The garden?" "No," the director nodded approvingly. "Your daughters didn't just change my company," Rashid said quietly. "They changed my soul." "No," Samuel corrected gently. "They reminded you that you had one." The story of the Winters twins would become legend in Canadian business, studied in universities, debated in boardrooms. But for Aliyah and Layla, it was never about fame or justice. It was about proving a simple truth. Brilliance blooms in every garden, you just have to know how to recognize it. And somewhere in Vancouver, in a public library where it all began, a new generation sat at computers, learning languages that would open doors their parents never knew existed. On the wall, a plaque read, "The Winters Learning Center, where every voice matters, in every language. Below it, a simple inscription, dedicated to all gardeners who plant futures, and to the children who bloom despite the shade. The revolution began with 2 girls who refused to be invisible. It continues with every child who learns to say, "I matter," in any language they choose.